Research methods. A longitudinal study is an observational research method in which data is gathered for the same subjects repeatedly over a period of time. Longitudinal research projects can extend over years or even decades. A longitudinal study, like a cross-sectional one, is observational, so once again, researchers do not interfere with their subjects, but just watch them from an outside view. However, in a longitudinal study, researchers conduct several observations of the same subjects over a period of time, sometimes lasting many years. For example, a researcher wants to find out the flexibility of 3 joints in the body of young British gymnasts twice a year over a period of 5 years. Then the researcher will observe the individuals over that period of time to collect meaningful data. The advantages with this is that it has high representativeness, and that it indicates what the whole population believes. It is also generalizable, and it can be generalized over a large amount of the population, and therefore it is reliable because a lot of people will agree with it. Finally, it is not biased because it's just an observational research and you are just measuring what you see. The disadvantages with this research is it requires a large sample size, so it's very time consuming. It lacks objectivity because the participant can't have their own opinion, which therefore means it lacks validity. People may drop out over time or might not be able to complete the full research. Correlational studies. Correlational studies determine whether 2 variables have a relationship / link. It aims to discover that if there is an increase or decrease in one variable, will this affect another variable to increase or decrease. An example would be the effect that stretching has on young British female athletes when performing floor. The advantages with correlation is that you are able to collect lots more research than methods like experiments. Also, the results are a lot more applicable to everyday life, as it takes place outside the lab. However, the disadvantages are that it only uncovers that there is a relationship, but not what the relationship is, so therefore it's not valid, because it lacks in-depth information. Also, it doesn't uncover or reveal which variable influences the other one. Comparative research is when you compare 2 things in an attempt to find a conclusion, identifying similarities and differences between groups and people. An example of this would be measuring and comparing the flexibility of young British female athletes of the age of 12 and 16. The advantages with this study is it's a good template to understanding the other set of data, and it enables you to understand the top standard of data. Also, when comparing data, it can help other rank data against each other. The disadvantages with this is if you compare the normative data, it could be biased. Also, the data has to be generalizable before you can compare, which is very time consuming usually. Also, because if the 3 of the 12-year-old girls had really good flexibility, but the rest had average, and all of the 16-year-olds jumped the same, then the research might generalize and say that they have the same amount of flexibility, like the 12-year-olds and the 16-year-olds, just because 3 of the 12-year-olds had very good flexibility. Case study. Case studies are in-depth investigations of a particular person, group, or situation over a period of time. The data gathered is through interviews and observations. An example of a case study would be collecting the weight of young British gymnasts. In this case, recording the development of the gymnasts over a period of time. The advantages with case studies is that there is rich data at the end of the study, which explains which explains the findings, and therefore it is high in validity. Also, it gives an unbiased introduction to the case study, as it is an outside view. The results you get from the case studies can be used to improve lifestyles, However, the disadvantage is that because it's a one-on-one, participant might not tell you 100% truth, and therefore it could be biased. Also, it will take you a long time to collect all of this data. It can't always be generalized to the public if only like three, if not many people are doing it, because it might just relate to them, because everyone is different and changes. Also, everyone is different and changes in different ways, as they have only studied one person. It's untrustworthy. Experiment. Experiment is a procedure carried out to support a hypothesis where they provide an insight into cause and effect by demonstrating what kind of results occurs when a particular factor is manipulated. An example would be, does Lucozade increase the level of performance for young British gymnasts? The advantages with an experiment is that as studies allow, it allows studies a lot of detail to be collected that would not normally be easily obtained by other research designs. Therefore, it's like richer data and higher in validity. The controlled also has a controlled environment which allows better results. The disadvantage is that artificial situations are created which hinders results. For example, if a gymnast had to perform in a lab rather than a gymnastic hall, then the results would be different. Also, it's very expensive as it requires a lab and can be subjective as there could be human errors involved. Cross-sectional study is a type of descriptive observational study which involves measuring different variables in the population of interest at a single moment in time. The information gathered from the cross-sectional study is from participants with varied variables. An example would be if you measured the flexibility of a 12, 14, 16 and 18-year-old and then measured the same age group 2 years later but with different people, and this would be a good example. The advantages with cross-sectional study is that it's quick and doesn't take up much time. It is used to prove or disprove assumptions and captures a specific point in time. Also, it is very low cost, and that is always useful. The disadvantage is that it could be biased because it doesn't determine why something happens. Also, it doesn't guarantee to be representative. Primary research is data that you have collected yourself and involves doing experiments, investigation and tests. The advantages with primary research is that you know what's happening and how it's being collected. Also, it's tailored to a current research as it's your research, so therefore it is reliable. The disadvantages with primary research are that it's more likely to be biased because you're doing it, so you obviously want to get the best results as possible, so you might change a few factors, variables. Also, it's going to cost you a lot of time and effort to do this primary research and even money. Secondary research is data that is collected by other people and then is existing, that is usually produced, and it is usually produced on the internet and other types of documents, which is summarized to enhance the success of the research. So basically, it's research from the internet done by different people, and you use it in your research. The advantages with this is that there's a wide range of secondary data, so there's lots of places you can get it from. It's easy and cheap to get hold of, and it helps to support a better understanding of a subject. The disadvantages is insufficient detail and outdated information. Qualitative and quantitative data. Qualitative research is data about qualities and often uses words and is in-depth data and rich and usually very useful for showing how and why things happened. So it's normally high in validity. There are two types of qualitative data, which are nominal and ordinal data. Quantitative research is data that can be measured numerically. It is precise data that is used to explain an outcome through collection of numerical data There are two types of quantitative data, which are interval and ratio data. Nominal data is data that is put into categories, and each category is tallied when a person fits a category. It is a type of qualitative data because it is categorical, and therefore it is the least and this nominal data is the least informative piece out of each of the data because it is neither measured or ordered with category. It's just a category. Whereas ordinal data is also put into categories, but the categories are organized in the way of ranking order or rating scales. This makes it a lot more informative because it provides you with information about the order of the choices. For example, the high rankings are usually at the top and the low rankings are at the bottom. So like take the Premier League, they have a table for all the football teams, and all the teams with the most points are at the top and all the teams with the lowest points are at the bottom. However, there is no information about the size of the difference in the ranking order, and therefore you're unaware of how different each category is from one another. So therefore you don't know using the same example, you don't know how say the top team is Manchester United, they might have 80 points and the bottom team might have only 10, so you don't know the difference. Finally, interval and ratio scales. Interval scales are numerical scales which have a meaningful order, which we know as well as the distances between the scales, which are equal. Also, it is continuous in their nature and has no meaningful zero. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the numbers decrease beyond 0 because there is no absence of meaning from 0, and is normally used with temperatures is a good example because you can get temperatures below 0. Ratio scales are exactly the same as interval scales apart from the fact they have a meaningful 0. Therefore, numbers can't physically go beyond 0. A good example of ratio scale would be height and weight.